It was the fall of 2009. I was 23 years old as I was getting ready to propose to my girlfriend at the time, and had been in town all day searching for the most beautiful ring I could get her. After I found her something nice, I headed back home. I found a package on the doorstep of my house, which I had just bought for 70 grand. I brought the package in, opened it up, and sure enough, it was a VHS copy of The Incredibles that I had ordered on eBay. I saw the movie in theaters with my younger brother in 2004, and we since loved it. I've been trying to obtain a copy of it for myself, but until this point, I only ever saw it when we rented it from Blockbuster or Family Video on DVD. I ordered the movie on VHS since I still have my old VCR that I got in Christmas of 2000, as well as plenty of movies. Figured, why not? I already had all the other Pixar movies, such as Toy Story, Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters Incorporated, etc., etc., which is an extremely valuable tape in current years. The tape I ordered was a clamshell copy and had different artwork from what was seen on the originally released VHS. It had Mr. Incredible on the front cover placed on a red 2D background, and the tape had the typical late 2000s ink label. Having a long day searching for engagement rings, I put the tape into the VCR, which was hooked up to the TV in the living room. Then I got a Monster Energy drink and some tortilla chips with cheese as I eagerly waited for the movie to begin. There were some trailers as well as promos, but nothing I couldn't fast forward past. The first act of the movie played out just as we all know and love. Mr. Incredible's car converts into its second stage as he pulls over into the street to get the cat out of the tree, all while catching the bad guys in the process. Then, of course, Buddy gets ejected out of the car. At some point on in the film, Mr. Incredible would have an interaction with Elastigirl. All was well, until Bob turned around and saw the guy who was about to jump off the building. For those who haven't seen the movie, as I have, Mr. Incredible jumps forward and catches the jumper, saving but injuring him in the process. In the version I just watched, he was a second too late. Mr. Incredible will crash through the window by himself, and the jumper successfully commits suicide. Our hero looks over the edge and sees the man on the street in a pool of his blood, people quickly surrounding him who scream in horror. As he looks at the chaos below, a bomb suddenly goes off and blows a hole in the wall, and the French supervillain Bon Voyage walks out. From there, everything plays out pretty similarly, to how it should. Buddy rockets in there and talks their ears off, and Bon Voyage proceeds to toss the explosive on his cape. Mr. Incredible manages to get the bomb off of him, quickly snatching it off. For a moment it beeps in his hand and at full force proceeds to chuck it at Bon Voyage, to which it explodes in his face and brutally kills him. As the bomb blows up, Buddy quickly flies off into the city without Mr. Incredible. Dust and debris are everywhere, and Mr. Incredible simply stood there brushing off his suit, taking one last look at the dead villain, who has a very horrific wound on his head. He walks off and heads to the church for the wedding. I was extremely surprised to see this kind of violence in a Pixar film. It reminded me of something from a Resident Evil game or old war footage. At this point, I had put together that this was not the movie I watched plenty of times before, as it was 5 to 6 years old at that point in time. And I had watched the movie enough times to know none of this happened in the film. But anyway, the scene of Bob and Helen's wedding passed, the bit about the supers being sued, only there was no mention of the train crash. Instead, Mr. Incredible is painted as the bad guy for not successfully saving that guy's life and being blamed for the wreckage of the bank. After this, the movie plays out as normal up until a dinner scene, which was altered. At the point where Helen tells Dash to tell Bob about how he got in trouble at school, and then Bob starts to congratulate him by saying, "You must have been booking it. How fast do you think you were going?" He gets distracted by Helen as he was cutting Dash's steak. Suddenly, we hear the plate break and the camera proceeds to pan down. Bob accidentally pressed the knife down on his fingers, however none of them were separated from his hand. There was a dent in the blade from his super sturdy knuckles, which were a tad bloody. This was a sharp steak knife, but Bob only saw this as a minor inconvenience. "Great. First the car, now I gotta pay to fix the table." He gets up and goes into the other room. Then the movie proceeds as normal, with Frozone coming over the burning building. Once again, everything seemed okay. That is, until we reach the scene where Bob and Mr. Huff are arguing in his office, in which Bob spots a person being mugged outside. He heads for the door to go help the victim and stops in his track where Huff yells, "Stop right now, or you're fired!" Of course, the bad guy gets away, and Bob's absolutely pissed. Bob grabs Mr. Huff by the neck, and instead of throwing him through the walls and into the filing cabinets, Bob grabs Mr. Huff by the neck and launches him through the window, into the alley, killing him on impact. As Mr. Huff hits the pavement, we hear a loud crunching sound, blood gushing, as the camera switches to Bob's point of view. He looks down through the window of Mr. Huff's course, and says under his breath, "Oh." Then we see him being carried off on a stretcher, into an ambulance. Following is pretty much the same scene with Bob and Dicker, except on the street, and then he goes home in his little car with a broken window. If you're a Resident Evil fan like I am, do you know that feeling that when you're in the save rooms and on the other side of that door, evil's waiting? Like the Hunters, the Lickers, or Cerberus? A feeling of uncertainty and anxiousness. Those were the feelings I had as I continued into the film. As the scene where Bob finds Tablet, the classified message from Mirage. If you've seen the movie, you know he is assigned to fight the Omnidroid on Nomadison Island. Next was the scene where he's talking to Mirage on the jet and discussing the mission to shine down the Omnidroid 9000 without destroying it. Bob is in his blue suit, which fits him even less than it does in the real movie. You can see a part of his belly, and the suit is also faded, almost gray. Bob is stuffed into the pod and shot out to Nomadison Island. However, he lands at a different part of it, close to an Omnidroid's whereabouts. Of course, he's stuck in the pod because he's too fat. As he's struggling to get out, the Omnidroid comes down and spots him. It smacks the pod and sends Bob several feet into the air. The pod falls off the trench and into the part where there is boiling lava. Finally, Bob manages to burst out of the pod just as the Omnidroid catches up with him. The robot snatches Bob up with its claws, and what follows makes my jaw drop. That thing impaled him through his chest with its claw, and then tossed him into the lava. I could not believe it. I almost shit my pants. Bob screamed his head off as his fat ass sunk into the lava, leaving a mess of blood behind. Eventually, Bob melted down to a large skeleton in a pool of blood, and the scene intently focused on that for about 6 seconds. Holy shit, I thought. Mr. Incredible is dead. The Omnidroid killed him. I almost thought I was dreaming after getting hammered. I was beginning to wonder if this was a prank. It was kind of like the video I saw on YouTube where those boys pranked their mom with the fake Toy Story 3 ending. Maybe a Scary Face or a Rickroll was coming next. But then the question arose. Who would go through this much trouble for a prank? The animation was a part of the movie, and voice acting was pretty close to the likes of Craig T. Nelson and Holly Hunter. There had to be more to this, and my curiosity got me to keep watching. After, that, we cut to a scene that is not in the movie whatsoever. It cuts to Helen standing in Bob's room full of Mr. Incredible stuff, presumably a few days following when he was supposed to be back. It is the middle of the night, after a minute of looking all sad and depressed. Helen looks at the display case where Bob's blue suit should be. That's the moment where she figures it all out. At least the part about him resuming hero work. Helen looks around the room and then finds the card with Mirage's number on it. She calls the number and Mirage answers. To make a long story short, Helen is quickly discovered to be Elastigirl, and Syndrome has Mirage assign a mission to her, which she accepts to go look for Bob. At no point during the phone call did Mirage allude to him being dead. The only mention being that Mr. Incredible was last seen on their island, and that gave Helen all the information she needed. So the scene that follows shows Helen on the same jet in her white and red suit from the beginning of the movie, much like with Bob. The suit was faded and barely fit. Visible ribs were in the suit, and it looked very tight on her. For simplicity's sake, just say that you would have been trying to change the channel if Mom walked in. Helen is dropped out of the jet in a pod into Nomadison. Once she gets out, she immediately starts looking for Bob. After about a minute of searching, Omnidroid V8 pops out and proceeds to chase her around. She swings across trees with her stretching arms to gain speed until there are no more trees to swing from. In a sunnier part of the island, Helen becomes exhausted and slows down, only for the Omnidroid to snatch her up with its claws. and it tries to pull her apart, much like how it did with Bob. Her body stretches like a slinky, and for a moment it seems that Helen has an advantage, just as the robot uses one of its other claws and puts it into buzzsaw mode. Holding her in its two claws, the robot slices and dices the stretched out Helen, leaving her dead in two pieces. Realizing that the target was terminated, Omnidroid converts into its ball form and rolls forward. Then the camera pans over to that bluebird, which was sitting in the trees a few feet back, and it zoomed through its eyes. The pupil shrinks. My bad. We didn't see the horrible mess that is Helen torn to two pieces, all stretched out like she's been spaghettified. From Syndrome Mirage's perspective, Mirage looks away from the carnage, covering her eyes, while Syndrome is looking at it in amusement. It killed two supers over 1 week. Oh man, this is just too good, Syndrome says. Anyway, you've got the whereabouts of another super. Let's go get him. He walks off, leaving Mirage by herself. The screen fades to black, and the movie ends. The end credits play, except instead of the bombastic credits theme, the music where Bob is in the computer room and discovering all the dead supers Chronos unveiled plays in a slightly lower pitch. The music eventually ends, but the credits just keep going in silence. After that, the closing logos come in. First, the 1995-2007 CGI Disney logo was exclusively seen on Pixar films up until Ratatouille. And then the Pixar logo, which was different. It was a still image. The background was black, and the lamp and text were white and shimmering. As it faded to black, my whole body was shaking, and I thought I was going to lose it. I sat there, ready to take whatever was next. In the moments of the black screen, I thought there was another sentence out of that, excuse me. 15 seconds later, a screen of red color bars would appear. The bar on the left was the brightest shade, and the bar on the right was the darkest. A series of beeps and dial sounds accompanied the bars, and the message was displayed on the screen. I saw it for about 5 seconds before I pressed the stop button and quickly ejected the tape and put it on top of the TV. My God, that scared the shit out of me. I had to go outside and have 2 cigarettes and then a beer later that night to take my mind off of it. That was seriously fucked up. I guess I'm glad I came across it and not as some little kid. My girlfriend would come over later that night to stay, and she noticed that I seemed more anxious than usual. I would eventually explain what I had watched earlier, that some jackass bit me $1. She could tell that it messed me up a bit, so we proceeded to get drunk together, and yeah. The next morning, I woke up and she wasn't next to me in bed. So I got up and walked into the living room. Well, guess what? She found that VHS tape and watched the movie herself. Being somewhat of a Pixar fan herself, although she was more DreamWorks movies like Shrek. My girlfriend was laughing her ass off the whole way through, purely out of shock. And she cut the movie, right as the credits started up. We rewound the tape and put the movie back in its case, and then never put it on again. While I still had the tape, I eventually got the real movie version of the movie on DVD. Fast forward 2024, I'm a married man and I have 2 kids, 1 son, 1 daughter. Both are 13. My wife and I were at work one day and they were at our house with their uncle, my older brother. While we were gone, they got bored and decided to look for a box of VHS tapes I had in the basement in the hopes of finding a movie to watch. After all, I still have the VCR, which surprisingly still works. To make a long story short, I come home and my son asked me if I knew of that alternate cut of The Incredibles they found. Much like myself all those years ago, he too seemed shaken up from what he had seen. My brother also recorded the entire movie on his phone, and as soon as it started getting weird, he just told me that he was going to upload to YouTube in pieces.